One.
Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd Community Forum to discuss the warrant, which is going to be presented tomorrow night at our town meeting and will be voted on. And it's mostly the budget adjustments from 2019.
Total of 14 people on here.
And we have a number of folks on here. We have about 14 people. And so if you aren't a speaking member, if you could mute yourself, because any noise that's made in your immediate vicinity will put you into the forefront of the screen. So when you're not speaking, if you could be muted, I appreciate that. And so we are going to start, before we talk about the warrant, we're going to have our moderator, Rebecca Townsend, just give us an update. I know we had a meeting today regarding the weather and things moving forward. And so you may have some last minute announcements. So I'll turn it over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this complicated town meeting. We have a number of mitigation procedures, as I said in the last forum, and I'll repeat a few of them in tonight's presentation in case somebody has not yet viewed that one. I would like to share my screen if that's all right. And making sure that I'm sharing the right one. So you should be able to see annual town meeting to be held Tuesday, June 23rd. Can you all see that? Okay. So this is the announcement that went out today. In today's announcement, we reviewed the data on COVID-19, and we have 2 positive cases in the community, and that number has been consistent for about 3 weeks. And so there's no need for us to cancel or postpone the meeting due to a spike in cases. So that hasn't happened. The big thing that was on a lot of people's minds was the weather. And given that we've had sun for days and days, now we get a chance of precipitation on the town meeting night. It is currently at 30% chance of rain on Tuesday. In the discussion this morning with the Emergency Management Director, Chief Dearborn, and the other members of the logistics team, we viewed that because the atmosphere is in a stable pattern right now, we should go ahead and have the meeting. If there is a need to pause the meeting due to a sudden burst of rain, we will take shelter either in the high school or we can go to our cars. But we would return after, if it's a brief storm. Obviously, if something larger happens, we would need to have a postponement. But right now, the stable weather pattern looks to be holding. So because of the heat, however, we have provided some other mitigation measures. So as this press release indicates, residents attending town meetings should bring an umbrella and use it as a shade because it's going to be sunny for the most part. And in the event rain develops, you'll have some protection as you walk to the high school. There will be a misting tent. And what that does is it allows for anybody who is feeling kind of overheated due to the sun exposure, it allows you to be a little bit cooler in that misting tent. So that's needed, that's there in case you need it. And the usual plan is in effect of having, the 2 check-in stations, one at Bliss Road and one at the pool entrance. And seating will be spaced apart in either a single chair or double chairs. If you come in with a member of your household and a spouse, you want to sit with your spouse, you're going to be able to do that. We're going to fill in these back sections first and then move forward. If anybody would like to bring their own chair, there's going to be an area where they can do that. But again, you'll be seated, you'll be ushered to that location by people who are wearing vests and marking them as staff. I need to note that because we're having 2 check-in stations, this is unusual. We usually just have 1 check-in station. And if there's a problem with anybody's check-in status, we would have to bring you to this station here at the pool entrance. Our town clerk will be located at this station here. If there's a problem that occurs during the meeting, well, we're going to have to pause the meeting a little bit to deal with that issue. We don't have an assistant clerk on staff right now who's going to be able to handle that. So we'll just ask for everybody's patience as we address any needs that come up. I should also note that we will have an area for people who are not wearing masks. Masks are required at town meeting. You know, put one on right as you get out of your car or right as you enter. And then if you don't have a mask, we'll provide you one at the clerk stations or at the check-in station by the pool entrance here on Grassy Gutter Road. And if you're not wearing a mask due to a medical reason, you'll be seated in this section toward the back. I should also note that our website, longmeadow.org/town meeting, has a lot of updates on what has happened so far, all of the mitigation measures that we have in place. And there's a frequently asked questions section with lots of drop-down menus available for you to get your questions answered. May I bring my dog or pet? Service animals are welcome. Other than that, leave your pets at home, please. So there's a lot of frequently asked questions. They can be addressed there. I should also note that the Finance Committee's recommendations are now on the town website. So you can see articles that they had previously not taken a position on, they have taken a position on. And citizen petition information is there as well. So the big thing that we want people to realize is that this is going to be an unusual town meeting, and their patience is really recommended. Stay hydrated. We'll have water for you. We'll have hand sanitizers available as well. And bring a good sense of humor as well as your goodwill to this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. When we have 90-degree days, I always like to have at least one day in the summer where I do get drenched in a rainstorm. My clothes eventually dry, and I don't melt. So this might be my opportunity. I assume that there's no rain protection for the select board, right?
Nope, sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, that's only fair. It's only fair. Lynn, do you have any additional comments to make about the meeting tomorrow? So, town manager.
Try not to share.
The only thing I would add is that we will not have a screen for presentations. So if any members of the public are interested, they can either access them via the website with their smartphone at the field. We will have a very limited number of paper copies available. And we will certainly ask that members of the same household share those copies. But that will be a difference from what your normal town meeting looks like.
Okay, well, thanks. I just, business detail, Brian, I know you're probably paying attention to us, but I just heard a report that the sound isn't coming out on the television. Maybe you could look into that and see, and I don't know if anybody else could get back to us if it doesn't get going. It's going to be a pretty well, for television watchers, it can be pretty boring to see me just move my lips about the warrant. And Brian, can you just respond that you got the message?
I did. Jim Moran just checked, and he said it looked and sounded good, and that was a couple minutes ago. So I don't know.
Okay, well.
And I have audio shown on my end, so.
Okay.
We are streaming on YouTube as well. So if there is an issue with someone's television for whatever reason, Mark Gold says the sound is fine.
It sounds fine. Well.
Yeah. So it could just be that person. they'd be
All
having
right.
an issue at home. But thank you.
Okay, no, thanks to you.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess if there's no further objection or any other folks who we will go into beginning to discuss the warrant and review it for the so we have, folks in the public here as well as people from various committees. And I am not going to introduce everybody who's here, but we do have several members of the select board here. And if I could just ask you to just identify yourself and say hi to the viewers. Mark Gold is here, right?
Yes, on the call. Thank you.
Yes. And Mark Strange, are you still with us?
I am here. Hi, everyone.
All right. And Steve Morantz? Okay. And Richard Foster?
I'm unmuting myself. Yes, I am here.
Oh, you're on mute. Stephen is here? Okay, great. And Richard Foster, I don't believe is going to be with us tonight, unless you're here, Richard. Okay. So I guess we'll go to the warrant article. And so some of these are straightforward. We have every year. The first one is that we move Article 1 is to move the town to vote to choose 3 trustees to administer the William Goswith bequest that Francis Smithard, William McGurk, and Aaron Kobler be chosen as trustees. And then that is followed by a consent agenda where we will group together, it looks like we have 6 different articles. All right.
Put yourself on mute.
All right. And so, yes, again, folks, as you enter the group, if you haven't muted your speaker, please do so. And then you can unmute if we have comments, or we will have time to comment. I guess the first thing, is there any comments on Article 1? Okay. And I'll move on to the consent agenda 1, which is articles. I guess, is there any comments on Article 1? On Article 1. And I'll move on to the.
You're running behind. You're running ahead.
Okay, thank you for helping with the mute issue. Folks can still hear me though, right? Okay. So let me make sure. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay,
Yep,
great.
everyone can hear you, Tom. So thanks.
Well,
Jim,
I have this other sheet in front of me and I couldn't see everybody. So, okay, so Article 2 is a movement, to move the town to vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury a sum of $75,000 for the purpose of supplementing the fiscal year 2020 budget for legal expenses to cover costs associated with protecting the town's interests dealing with the distribution of natural gas in town and other legal matters associated with the site for the new DPW facility. So I will read through the articles and then I will ask people if there's specific articles that they wanted to comment on. Article 3 is a movement for the town to transfer $50,000 from available funds in the treasury and $50,000 from the ambulance fund for the purpose of supplementing the fiscal year 2020 budget for fire overtime. Article 4 is to move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $62,000 and $25,000 from the fiscal year 20 budget or recreation daycare salaries for the purpose of supplementing the fiscal year 2020 snow and ice removal deficit. Article 5, I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of providing the town matching share on energy saving projects. And Article 6, I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of funding ancillary costs associated with converting the town's existing streetlights over to high-efficiency LED lighting. And Article 7, I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $18,600 for the purpose of supplementing the fiscal year 2020 police department budget for training and uniforms. And so that is the end of that group. And so I would ask if anybody has any questions or comments regarding Articles 2 through 7.
Yeah, this is John Friedson on Green Willow. I have several.
Okay, John, you have the floor.
First one, concerning the transfer of funds covering for the snow expenses. I'm a
Yes.
little confused. I thought we had a lighter than usual year for snow.
Yes. I know it. You'd think it would be water removal, right? I bet Paul Pasturza could answer that question. Are you with us, Paul?
Just had to unmute it.
Oh.
It is true, we did have a lighter than usual winter. Most of those expenditures were for salt and for pre-treatment of the roads as opposed to actual plowing. And again, there probably is a good salt supply that we still have, but that's what the main expenditures were for this winter.
Well, let me
If I
restate.
could also point out, this is Mark Gold, Mr. Fritzen, if I could, the town is allowed to, and we do budget a minimal amount for snow and ice removal for the winter. So every year we essentially go into the winter knowing we're going to overspend it. And I think I've been told a couple of times that essentially our annual salt comes very close to exceeding the budget. So anything causes us to go over. So the amount that we've got in here is literally very minimal compared to prior years. So it's not unusual that we exceeded the budget. We actually intend to do that.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm going to back up, forgive me, to Article 3, which my curiosity is on the situation with the retirements and resignations. Military deployment's a whole separate issue, obviously, but retirement and resignation, how long ago did those happen and what's been done about them?
Okay, I don't know if our fire chief is available to take this question, or if I should have Lynn.
He's not here on this, at this forum right now. These two happened in the last 6 months. We've been actively trying to, we've just posted the other day actually for 2 new firefighters, and interviews were held this morning, and we're working to try to fill those.
So I'm sorry, they've been open for 6 months? I didn't quite understand the first part.
Within the past 6 months, we've had 2 of those, the retirement and the resignation.
Okay, could somebody simply, for the meeting tomorrow, have the details so we have an understanding whether they've been open for 6 months or open for 6 days or open for 6 weeks, to understand why there should be so much overtime? I'm personally interested in how long has the hiring process been taking on these? And I doubt they've been open for 6 months, but they've been open for some time.
Right.
Right, just, we have the rest of the information tomorrow. That would be terrific. My last one on this group, on Article 2, covering the town's interest dealing with distribution of natural gas. I am curious, who has defined what the town's interest is and what are those interests?
Okay, so, there's a proposed gas transfer station.
Yep.
And the proposed would be that there would be a metering station, and then gas pipeline would go through the town, up Laurel Street into Springfield. And so there's been a number of meetings. I don't know if you've listened, but there's been a number of folks who have come before the select board since the first announcement of this project, requesting that we take action to see what we could do to see if this project doesn't move forward, They feel, people feel it's a safety hazard to the community and a lot of different reasons. And so, the board is simply responding to requests of residents who have made this an issue that we should be addressing. I don't know what else I can say. Had you seen town meeting, or have you seen select board meetings where people came up and spoke to that issue?
You have to forgive me a little bit. I've recently retired, and only now in my life do I have the time to get as involved in this as I wish I had earlier. I've been a resident for 24 years,
Okay,
but really haven't gotten much involved in the past, and now I'm playing a bit of catch up. So I understand that one, and I won't actually go into it, but my understanding on the DPW has to do with mitigation of asbestos.
mhm.
That for somehow we bought and got this site and didn't research it to know what we were buying. Is that what happened?
On Article what?
Article 1. This is legal matters associated with the site for the new DPW facility.
Article 2.
Okay.
2, I'm sorry.
Article 2. And so, yeah, I mean, the question is regarding, there was we found, we found problems with, there was materials on there that had to be removed. I don't know if somebody else would want to discuss that. Is Mario? Probably not. Mark Gold, I see a hand for you. Would you like to?
Yeah, Mr. Fritzen, what we took land for the DPW site by eminent domain. That limits the amount of pre-site access that we have to the site. We took that site because the town turned down the proposal to build it on town-owned land at the Wolf Swamp Field. So we took that site, and once you own it, the site, you own the problem. We were not aware of the extent of the asbestos on that site until we owned it. And once we owned it, we were obligated to deal with it. And so part of this is dealing with legal liabilities for looking for remediation and assistance from the former owner.
I'm familiar with asbestos. And we're going through Article 7, right? That's all I've got on this group. Thank you.
Okay. The only other thing is, Lynn, I don't know if you could address in terms of the article regarding the overtime budget for fire and safety. And the, because, with COVID-19, is that a part of the reason that they needed more funds?
I can answer that question, but I do see the town moderator has been raising her hand a couple times.
Okay. Yes, Rebecca. Oh, you're muted. Rebecca?
Yes.
Oh,
So the issue and Mr. Friedson, this is important for you. Because Articles 2 through 7 are being moved as part of the consent agenda, if you have any questions about these articles, they would be answered during this forum. If anybody wanted to consider further questions on any of the articles and handle that issue separately, there's a procedure for doing so that I'll outline at town meeting. I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that the consent agenda meant they're moved as a group.
okay.
If I can, on the overtime, a lot of that was basically as a result of the vacancies. These articles were written basically for the most part back in March before all this pandemic really started. We may have increased it slightly, but the majority of this money is because of the vacancies.
Okay, great.
And Tom, if I could just add, if Mr. Friedson if he wanted me to follow up with him directly tomorrow, he could call me or send me an email, and I can then reach out to him directly if he wanted that question addressed before town meeting.
That would be super if you can give me either one of those.
Sure. So email is lsimmons, so it's LSIMMONS @longmeadow.org. Or you can reach me by phone at 413-565-4110.
I'm sorry, 4110.
Thank
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I have a question on Article 5. This is Stuart Friddle.
If you could just give your name and your address, I should have.
Yeah, it's Stuart Friddle, and I live at 86 Converse Street.
Okay.
So what's the payback required for these energy efficiency improvements?
Okay.
Like if the $50,000, should we want to spend it, what payback is required? Is it, it pays for itself in 2 years or?
Right. Well, I guess I will let Lynn Simmons, if you could take that question first, because I imagine part of that has to do with applying for some grants for the $50,000 of matching share of energy saving projects. And then probably Mark Gold is chomping at the bit to talk about the the lights and the amount of funds that we're going to be saving regarding LED lighting. So Lynn, if you want to comment to that.
I'm sorry, I was
Oh.
trying to reach the fire chief to get an answer on the deployment and resignation retirement questions. So Mark Gold has his hand up and I'm not sure if he's ready to speak on that.
Lynn, in Article 5, it says that we're looking at a $50,000 transfer for the town to provide their matching share with energy saving projects. And so could you speak to that? Do you know?
So basically I'm asking what payback is required for you guys to approve giving the money.
So this is Mark Gold. Unlike a for-profit company, we work on an annual budget, and if we in the existing budget or next year's budget, it saves immediately because we don't carry money over from one year to the next. In this case, we're putting up $50,000 and Eversource is also putting up money. So right away it's costing us half as much. But in general, when we do these analyses, they're 2 to 3 year maximum paybacks. Streetlights are a little longer, but that's mostly because it's a major capital investment. And we do account for the payback of the capital. But for the most part, these are all 2 to 3 year paybacks.
Okay, and then it's published what we spent the money on afterwards?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for your questions. Any other questions on these first 7 articles? Okay, hearing none.
Sorry, Tom, I did get a response back on the fire question, and this
Okay.
might address the answer right now, but if not, I'm happy to follow up directly again tomorrow. The deployment has been a year. The resignation and the retirement were both filled in February and March, but the employees are in training and the academy was closed due to COVID. So we've had some delays in getting those people fully on shift.
Okay, great. Okay, I saw a thumbs up from John, so we'll move on to Article 8. I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds the treasury the sum of $1,460.92 for the purpose of paying bills from the prior year. Any questions or comments on that? Not a great amount of money. Article 9, I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $100,000 for the purpose of producing preliminary survey and design work for the possible reconfiguration of Longmeadow Street and Route 5 in Longmeadow.
Yeah, this is John Friedson again.
Yes, John.
I find this a very conflicted warrant because on the one hand, we're so terrified that our houses are going to devalue to the point where we need to ask years in advance for permission to exceed the state limitation on raising taxes. And on the other hand, we seem to have an appetite for spending money in very different and certainly not critical directions. And this certainly appears to me to fall in one of those. Now, I'll tell you, I mentioned I just recently retired. I'm a newcomer to Longmeadow. 24 years, that doesn't make me anywhere near the old timers. But I have been here long enough to see my taxes almost triple.
Yes.
Now, if we have a town which raises its property taxes to the point where seniors can't afford to keep their homes, there won't be any of us left here to enjoy the multi-million-dollar senior citizen center. That means we need to act with some fiscal restraint. And a town that's terrified that our homes are going to fall through the floor, which, by the way, Zillow would disagree with, we certainly shouldn't be looking for ways to spend money. This is one of those things that definitely says, no, we don't only want to spend 100 grand here, we'll spend another 400 grand later on a street that seems to be operating just fine. So I'm just voicing not only my opinion, but I can tell you, having been in discussion with a number of seniors in this town, all of our opinion that while we don't expect Longmeadow to stay with a beer budget, we need to stick to domestic champagne and not imported. And
Well,
this is one of those items that I'm just noting I am absolutely against, for what it's worth.
yes. Well, in terms
Tom,
of.
if I could just kind
Well,
of,
I would like to respond first. So
go
when
ahead.
we look at the difference between domestic and imported champagne. So this is a project that we're looking at $100,000 from our town domestic, but we're really trying to land money from the federal government to pay for the road, pay for the improvements. Again, Route 5 is the main venue, for Longmeadow. People look at Longmeadow, that's usually the road they come in on and see. We don't have sidewalks that are continuous the whole from one end to the other. We don't have bike trails, that are continuous from one end to the other. We do have a casino north of us, and so when there's difficulty on Route 91, people do cut through town, and so if we can get federal money to repair or make updates on Route 5, they have computers that can watch cars and figure out how many are there and move them through more efficiently. I have had people call me about the light at by Rinaldi's there, and it doesn't seem to work properly. It's only supposed to turn red on Route 5 when people come in from the side street, but it's impossible to get parts for that because it's an older thing. And if you look at Converse Street, it was a similar thing. We had done the pre-engineering and planning, and so when money became available, we were able to get funding to have that construction done. The town did pay for the construction at the intersection of Converse and Dwight. And if you drive through there, hopefully you're happy with the effect that has had. The traffic moves through much quicker. And, I guess the select board voted to follow up on this, because if we look at the federal government, they don't agree on a lot of things, but they seem to agree on infrastructure. And so if money is, available for infrastructure improvements, having this preliminary work done is a really good investment for the town, because that would do it. Now, I don't know if Walter Gunn is online, if he would want to speak to this at all. Walter? Oh, okay. He was here earlier.
All right. Well, I'll comment back to that very quickly. Number one, last I checked, I'm paying federal and state taxes too. The money doesn't come from nowhere. Although after this year, it may be our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren that are trying to pay off the federal debt. And in a year of economic disaster, in the middle of a health crisis, I'm personally not interested in risking 100,000 now and 400 or 300, whatever the number is, thousand later, just in case we might get the money that, oh, by the way, directly or indirectly, we're going to pay for anyway. So I hear all that, and making it easier for people to use us as a route to get to the casino, if the casino even reopens. I don't know if you've read the news lately. They're not sure they want to or can under the current situation. This is not a must-do expenditure. And in this year, with the economic situation, the health situation, this terrible fear that somebody has that our housing prices are going to collapse, this is not the year to be doing this. And then I'll be quiet about it. That's just my opinion.
Okay, John. Thank you. Any other comments on this article? Article 9. Okay. So we will move on to Article 10. I move that the town vote to transfer from available funds in the treasury the sum of $7,975 to the town's operational stabilization fund previously established by vote of Article 15 at the November 18, 2003 special town meeting. Any questions on Article 10? Okay. Article 11, I move that the town vote to transfer from the solid waste recycling retained earnings the sum of $10,000 to cover a portion of the town's costs associated with the purchase of new trash barrels that were made in the fall town meeting, I guess. Any questions on Article 11? All right. Article 12, I move that the town vote to transfer from water retained earnings the sum of $40,000 for the purpose of supplementing the fiscal year 2020 water enterprise budget for the purchase of water from the city of Springfield. Any questions on that? Okay. And there's a note that we are now moving into articles addressed more to fiscal year 2021. And so Article 13, I move that the town vote to fix the fiscal year 2021 salary and compensation for the moderator at $100 and the select persons at $2,000 each, to provide for a reserve fund and to approve the fiscal year 2021 operating budget totaling $72,249,165 and itemized as follows. And so I think folks are able to see this on our website. We will have to report all the numbers at the meeting tomorrow. But does anyone, what are any general questions about Article 13 and the budget?
Yeah, John Friedson again.
Yes,
You're going to
John.
hear me a lot. I have a question about one line, and
Okay.
that line is the unexplained $600,000 increase to the school budget. I would expect a number that large would be addressed in the warrant, but it's not. So can somebody explain it?
I can, Tom. If you double check the numbers, it's actually a $350,000 reduction.
From 36,000,027, you're absolutely right, and I'm absolutely wrong, and I stand corrected, sir. Thank you.
Well, better to know for sure, John. Thank you.
I'd rather be made a fool in front of 14 people than 1,400. And by the way, one more comment. I think the moderator at $100 is underpaid.
Yes. Thank you for your comments. Any other questions on Article 13? All right. Good. So we will, let me just get going here. Okay, then we move to Article 14. I move that the town vote to petition the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to permit the town, subject to approval at a town-wide referendum vote, to exempt the town of Longmeadow from the requirements of paragraphs B, D, and E of Section 21C of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, by adding paragraph F as follows. The local appropriating authority of any city or town may by 2/3 vote seek voter approval at a regular special election to accept this paragraph F, thereby rejecting the limits set forth in paragraph B, not to be subject to it, provided, however, that the question submitted shall be as follows. Shall the city or town of, so it would be Longmeadow of Massachusetts, adopt paragraph F of Mass General Law 59, Section 21C, thereby rejecting the 2.5% of assessed market value tax ceiling limit set forth in paragraph B of Mass General Law 50, Section 21C. Yes or no? And provide further that said question be deemed approved, if a majority of the persons voting thereon shall vote yes. So this would modify Chapter 51, Section 21C on the local exemption from the for local exemption of the 2.5% assessed market value ceiling tax limit, which is $25 per $1,000 of property value. I don't know if I need to continue on, but there are some points in this that are kind of significant, and that residents would vote each year to increase the budget by no more than 2.5% over the prior year's town levy, which is something we've been doing, I guess, since 1980 when this was adopted, and stay at the same sort of 2.5%. And again, you know, we've had years where the select board has been able to keep it at 2% or lower. So any questions on Article 14?
John Friedson, you know I'm speaking to this one.
Yes.
Okay, a few things. Now, when this was written a couple of months ago,
Yes.
I can understand some of the perspective.
Mhm.
However, just using the largest and easiest to find and research source, using Zillow, property valuations in Longmeadow in the last 12 months have gone up 3%. This information is a couple of days old. And Zillow is projecting another 3% increase in property values over the next year. This, again, if you read the whole thing, talks about, well, this might happen. We might get this problem with the collapse in property values over the next several years. In my experience, it is never good to give a government any leeway in raising taxes any sooner than necessary. This is certainly not needed now. We already have the highest taxes in the Commonwealth. Not needed. Plenty of time to do it when it happens. And oh, by the way, if the value of my house gets cut in half, I may be even less interested in letting this go through. So absolutely, positively not. There's absolutely no reason to do this now. And by the way, if we're in that much of a collapse, I promise you the state legislature will be focused on this and very type of thing and very little else. So my feeling is no way.
Okay.
But it's worth.
Tom, thanks for your
Tom?
comments. Yes.
This is Steve.
Yes. Steve Morantz, please.
A couple points. We do not have the highest taxes in the state of Massachusetts. That is a fact. We might have the highest tax rate, but the taxes you pay are not the highest taxes in the state of Massachusetts. That is, so we got to deal with facts here. So we can say we have a high tax rate, not the highest taxes. Also, in terms of what this does, since it has to go to the legislature, it's probably 2 years before this actually happens. A lot can happen in 2 years. If we never get past $25 on the tax cap, the whole vote doesn't take effect. This gives us the flexibility. You can shake your head as much as you want, but the fact is it gives us flexibility. And we can't, you know, it doesn't give us a blank check to raise taxes past 2.5%. That's all we can do, no matter what. We can raise this limit to $100. We still can only do 2.5 per year at a time. So this gives us some flexibility because, you know, Zillow may be a great source. You put your house in the market, call Zillow and say, hey, you say my house is worth this amount of money. You pay me for it. Zillow doesn't determine the market. Zillow is not the absolute. They say it's going to go up, good for them. It's what you can sell your house for. But this gives us flexibility. It doesn't lock us into anything. And we certainly are not the highest tax town in the state of Massachusetts.
All right, John Friedson, I'll stand corrected. You're right, highest tax rate. But in any event, it's still real dollars that we have to pay out every year. And you'll forgive me, but the whole point is I and many others that I've spoken to in the last 2 weeks, both online and face-to-face, don't want you to have that flexibility. We want you to do reductions and limit spending if we run into that situation and not have that flexibility. That's where we digress as a matter of philosophy.
Well, it will be a matter of what you will be able to sell your house for and what kind of town you want to live in. And so that's, you know, that's a matter of debate. But when we hit that limit and we can't go any further, you know, no schools, no police, no this, no that, that's what's going to happen. And you can shake your head again, but facts are facts. when you hit the limit and you can't raise your taxes, and it'll become self-fulfilling. Property values will go down, our tax rate will go down, and and your 25 years here might be 50 because you won't be able to sell it, but it will be self-fulfilling.
Well, Steve, it's only self-fulfilling if we don't manage our costs better. If we don't manage how we're spending our money better, then it's self-fulfilling. But we can take a look at what we're spending our money on and make some smarter decisions.
And do you feel we have not spent our money wisely to this point in time?
I've been here for 3 years, and I read the warrant in detail. I have somewhat of a financial background. I had a lot of questions about a lot of the increases and a lot of the expenditures. So yeah, I think that we could have improved on some things.
Okay. And Stuart, just for your address, where do you live in Longmeadow?
86 Converse Street.
Okay, thanks.
The truck passage road.
Yes, yes.
Which, Lynn, I have an email to you about.
All right, good. Let's see if we
If I could, I'd like to just add something for clarification. I'm not going to argue.
Article 14.
If
we discussed
the article, but I think I need to clarify some things that have been talked about online and et cetera about the article. The article is not about taxes that we raise. You know, the taxes that are raised by the residents at town meetings like the one we're going to have tomorrow night. So what we're talking about in this article is a tax rate. A tax rate is a calculation. It's primarily done by the state. The select board does adopt it, but we don't get to change the denominator. The value of the properties is set by the assessors and approved by the state. And so we're in a situation where we have not tax control, but tax rate resulting from what we're doing. And we find ourselves in a position, as I think what people are hearing, is that if we hit this tax rate, the response is to cut expenses. And everybody's going to say, great, that's what we want you to do. Well, in Longmeadow, and Paul Pasturzik will probably correct me, we're something like 80% personnel expenses. So, we don't buy enough salt for the roads or paper clips for the streets, for the offices. And so if we've got to cut by our budget, we cut people. And when we cut people, we cut services. And then when we cut services, and it will fall on the schools, because the schools are probably 75% of our expenses. People say houses in Longmeadow are less desirable because the school system's cutting teachers. And so that's, I think, what Steve Morantz was talking about as a potential spiral. Everybody says property values will never go down. We have, just in the last 7 or 8 years, experience with the average value in the town of Longmeadow going down during a recessionary period. And through no change in the amount of money we raised, and I've done the work, so we are 46th in the average tax bill in the Commonwealth. We may be highest in tax rate, but 46th in the highest tax bill. But through no change of what we do, we would find ourselves having to make some pretty drastic cuts to the services that we provide. This article is nothing more than, if you will, an insurance policy, allowing us to keep available options should we need them. Because if it came down to where in 2 or 3 years property values decline, at that point it's too late for us to go back and say, but we like our town and we want to keep our teachers and we want to keep the library open and the adult center open and we want the DPW and the police and the fire. At that point it's too late because you don't have the option. So this is simply a request to look forward a few years, plan. Hopefully we'll never need it. If in fact property values go up at 3% a year and we're only raising taxes at less than 2% a year, we're in good shape. But if in fact things turn south, we may need this insurance policy. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other comments about Article 14 or concern?
I have a question if I could.
Mr. Burns, give your address in Longmeadow.
39 Vanguard Lane.
Okay.
Now, is there a projection of costs going up that will correlate with the increased needs? Can you say like we know based on salary increases with our contracts that we were going to be going up 3.5% a year or anything like that?
Sure, yeah, in terms of negotiated contracts with people who have unions and so forth. I guess, Paul, would you be the best person to give an idea of that? Thank you. Paul Pasturzik?
Union contracts aren't the biggest thing right now. It's more of a concern of our property taxes going down, either through mainly through a recession at some point in time. As people know, valuations and economic materials all go through cycles. And I think that's the bigger issue. We are still limited in the amount that we can raise annually by another provision of Proposition 2.5. And that is that we can only raise taxes 2.5% of the prior year levy limit. So it's not necessarily the expenditure side that is growing by leaps and bounds, but it's more of the concern of if property taxes do go down. Again, collective bargaining agreements have been signed mainly in the vicinity of cost of living increase 1.5% to 2% over the last 5 or 6 years. So that's really not the biggest budget buster per se when you compare it to the 2.5% that we can raise. Certainly you would probably realize that employee benefits do go up by 5, 6, 7%. That is probably the biggest budget buster on the expenditure side. But again, I think it's more of a feature of potential drop in valuation of the community.
So we don't have anything actually saying that our costs are going to increase in excess of the 2.5%. We're just concerned that our property value is going to decrease based on what?
Based on what?
Yep.
Just the cyclical nature of economics.
Well, I've been
Paul, even
before,
Mr. Burns, if I could, Mr. Burns, answer your question. This is Mark Gold. Even before COVID-19, we had a projection from our CFO, Mr. Pasturzik, that in 3 to 4 years, we'd be exceeding or meeting that $25 tax cap. It's primarily not because of our spending, which is actually, if you've looked at ours, and I have, relative to other communities in the Commonwealth, over the last 17 or 18 years, we've been at among the lowest, if not the lowest rate of increased spending. But what we've got is statutory expenses. Things like pensions. Our pension expenses for our employees are going up 8% per year for the next foreseeable future, I guess, is what the pension boards told us. And we don't get to adjust that. That's fixed by the state. Our medical expenses for our employees and benefits, those are going up. Our retiree medical benefits, those are exceeding the 3%. So the expenses we can control, as Paul indicated, done a decent job of controlling. But there's a lot of expenses we don't control. And those are the ones that are telling us that over the next 3 to 4 years, even if our property values stayed where they were, we'd be pushing the limit of Proposition 2.5's tax ceiling. But certainly if our property values were to decline at all, which is something we saw during the last recession, this would come upon us much, much more quickly. And so that's what we're trying to do, is have just one additional thing to fall back on should the town meeting decide to adjust for hitting this tax rate. Again, this article does not allow us to exceed $25 per thousand. All it does is asks the legislature for permission to potentially let us go back and through 2 separate town votes exceed that limit. And even then, first we'd have to pass the budget. So the town meeting, if you will, gets 3 shots at doing anything down the road. But without this, they get no shots.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Good. Any other questions or comments on the motion articles for 14? Okay, I guess I'll just make like a sliver of a comment because I saw how things affected budgets when 2.5 was first produced in 1980. And so I guess I'd say that when I first came to town and I went to a violin, it was a orchestra concert in the grammar school. And you had a bunch of small children there playing violins, and it kind of sounded like a bag of cats that was being shook up, you know. And then sophomore year, when they was in middle school, they started sound a little bit better. Sound a little bit better. And when high school, when you went to orchestra, they actually played in Carnegie Hall. And so that progression is kind of impressive. But if we had to cut all of our budgets, I think that the grammar school music program, that sounds like a bag of cats, would disappear, but it's so essential in the building blocks. And that's just one slice, but there's so many services that would be affected if we reach that $25 limit that, that's what we need to be thinking of.
I guess just one question. Has the town undertaken any cost-cutting measures during our economic crisis? Because I noticed all the salaries and everything were going up. I mean, we can't go to the library. Are we paying the librarian, or are they on furlough? Are we doing any salary cuts?
We've had furloughs and salary cuts. Lynn, would you want to speak to that question?
Sure. We currently have 86 employees out on furlough right now. We cut $850,000 from the budget that I presented on March 2nd to the select board. I submitted a revised one that they approved on May 4th with that $850,000 cut. 500 of it was on the town side and 350,000 of it was on the school side.
Is there a place where we can see that budget compared to what's out there today, or?
I think if I was looking at this, let's see, I'm trying to remember. There's the presentation that I am giving at town meeting tomorrow night is posted on the town meeting page and also on the town website right now. There's both the budget I submitted in March and then the budget that was revised in May. Both of those are under the select board town manager page under budget.
Okay, thanks. I'll take a look at it.
Okay, Stuart. Okay, so let's move on to Article 15, which is I move the town to vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $44,089 for the purpose of establishing a wage settlement to cover the fiscal year 2021 non-school, non-union wage adjustments. Any questions on that article? Okay, Article 16, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the following amounts for capital projects, and that any remaining amounts from the capital projects be returned to the Capital Stabilization Fund where applicable. And so we have a list here that addresses a number of things that need to be replaced that are capital items, and the total comes up to the sum of $1,810,100. And so any questions on Article 16? Okay, we'll move to Article 17. I move that the town vote to authorize the treasurer to borrow the sum of $300,000 for the purposes of replacing a portion of sewer lines on Converse Street and the related bond costs to be paid in the first instance from sewer receipts. This will probably keep some of the trucks from going down Converse Street. Any questions on Article 17? Okay. Article 18. I move that the town vote to authorize the treasurer to borrow the sum of $433,000 for the purposes of replacing water mains on Birch Road and the related bond costs to be paid in the first instance from water receipt. Any questions on that? Article 19. I move that the town vote to authorize the treasurer to borrow the sum of $510,000 for the purposes of replacing culverts on Pondside Road and the related bond costs to be paid in the first instance from stormwater receipts. Any question on 19?
Just John Friedson again, quick
Yep.
question, 18 and 19, just for my own information.
Yeah.
I'm sure we must have a competitive bidding process for all these expenditures.
Mhm.
Are those available in the town hall to review what the competitive bidding process is on any given project?
Good question. Lynn, do you want to take that?
So yes, but currently it would need to be done virtually right now.
Of course.
Yeah, but yes, we could provide you with that.
Yeah, just for going forward, if I want to look at things and see how the bids were done and who they were placed with and so forth, I'd like to start taking a look at that stuff. Super, thank you.
I think a
Okay.
lot of that information, Mr. Friedson, is if you go on to I think the purchasing manager has a web page that he has a lot of that information on his web page. The bids that came in and the awards per se.
Okay. So we'll move on to Article 20. I move that the town vote to transfer from the ambulance fund the sum of $322,000 for the purchase and equipping of a new ambulance. Any questions?
Yep, John Friedson, Greenwillow.
Sure.
Let me preface this by saying that I'm retired military, and at one point in my torturous career, I actually commanded a medical company. So I do have a little appreciation for medical equipment and good medical equipment. And as a senior, I only want to be on the receiving end of good medical equipment. That being said, we use F-550s as the chassis for our ambulances. And for those who are not familiar with them, ambulances depreciate at a rate that can only be described as staggering. If you think your Mercedes depreciates fast in a couple of years, look at what happens to an ambulance. I found, just by doing a little bit of looking, very new, very low mileage, F-550 based Type 1, which is what we're looking at, ambulances. And I'm going to suggest and move at the meeting tomorrow that this measure be sent back and tabled unless it includes a proviso that we will examine the used market and potential suitability for our use. I understand we all want brand new.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't have a brand new car. My wife doesn't have a brand new car. My daughter doesn't have a brand new car. As they say, nobody drives a brand new car because the minute you start driving it, it's used. If we can find a vehicle with 20 or 30 or 40,000 miles on it for 40 or 50 or $60,000, there's an enormous savings that might go to places that the police and fire department could use them besides just putting them into new equipment. And I don't know that we would, but I'm going to push very hard that we at least take a look before rushing out to go buy the dream car.
All right, John, good luck with that one. My son was visiting for Father's Day and he went to buy a guitar case and they had a used guitar case. They told me he couldn't buy it because of COVID-19. He had to buy a new case. I'm sure they're going to say the same thing about ambulances, but that kind of thinking, is good thinking. And I guess I would like to encourage you to look for, some board or committee in the town that you could, we could have some of these discussions prior to this point in the decision-making process. So I guess I would ask folks to consider, get in touch with John as far as what would be a good committee for him to be joining, given his, his zeal to look into saving the town money. Any other questions or comments on Article 20? Okay, thank you. Article 21. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $180,025 for the purpose of paying the fiscal year 2021 district improvement financing debt service. And as you know, that was the section where we made the changes to the Dwight Converse intersection. Any questions on that? Okay. Article 22, I move that the town vote to appropriate $47,836 from the state for highway improvements under the authority of Mass General Law, Chapter 90, including funds to be received in fiscal year 2020 or any other applicable laws to authorize the select board, if necessary, to apply for, accept, and borrow in anticipation of state aid for such projects. Expend. So that's Article 22, 47,000. Any questions on that? Okay. So Article 23, I move that the town vote to appropriate $478,362 from the state for the highway improvements under the authority of Mass General Law, Chapter 90, including funds to be received in fiscal year 2021, or any other applicable laws to authorize the select board, if necessary, to apply for, accept, and borrow in anticipation of state aid for such projects expend.
John Friedson, Green Willow. Quick question, because I'm a little confused here.
Yeah.
This means we could borrow up to $500,000 and hope we're getting it back from the state, whose taxes we also pay for? Or does this mean that we would only borrow the money if we're sure we're getting reimbursed by the state?
That's a fair question. Paul Busterzik's raising his hand.
I mean, we're almost guaranteed, we are guaranteed this money. It is a contract with the state. We would only borrow this money if we had cash flow issues.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions on Article 23? Okay. Then we move to second consent agenda. We'll consider Articles 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29 in a group, unless town meeting decides to pull out an article of the consent agenda for separate discussion. And so I move the articles as part of consent agenda. And these are a various amount of community preservation articles. And so does anybody have any questions on any of the articles? Or is there anybody who'd like me to read them, or should we just take a look at them and discuss them as needed?
John Friedson, I don't need you to read them. I have them all in front of me.
Great.
But I'm curious on Article 25, first question, the $27,000 that was allocated for portion of repair to the library roof, was that money already spent?
I asked the question, yeah.
This is Arlene. This is Arlene Miller. Hello.
Yes.
So, okay. I'm on the Community Preservation Committee, and I was asked to sit in on this to answer this sort of question. Yes, that has been spent.
Okay. I have a question. Do you by any chance happen to know the number of square feet of that roof?
I do not.
Or do you know the number of square feet of a library? The reason I'm asking is my wife and I manage about a dozen rental properties, including things like replacing roofs. And I am curious as to, when we're talking about, with the $27,000, $250,000 replacing a roof, how much roof are we replacing, and why is the number that high? Because I've replaced quite a few roofs, so I have a feeling for what a typical house roof costs. And this is, to say the least, substantially more. So I would like if somebody could have that information for tomorrow night, so we know how many square feet this is, and we'll see whether those of us that have some familiarity with it, see if that's reasonable. I can't tell from this.
No, that'd be fine. And the DPW director would have that information, so we can have that for you tomorrow night.
Thank you. I tried to find it online and I couldn't. That's why I'm asking.
But Tom, just to reiterate what Rebecca Townsend said, though, if this is going to be as a consent agenda, there won't be an opportunity to discuss them individually. And so I think we ought to get that question answered for Mr. Fritzen in advance of that. I know it's a slate roof. I know that, they do go out competitively bid them. So, I think they should have that information in what was submitted to the Community Preservation Fund in advance.
The entire application for CPA is on the website under government and then community preservation. The roof was put on in 1993. I'm just looking here quickly while we're on this forum if there's a square footage amount, and I haven't located it yet, but the entire application is online.
The other thing I would add too is we also have to pay prevailing wages.
Well,
yeah, great point, Paul, because that adds a significant cost that the members of the private sector don't end up having to absorb when they do a project.
You're telling me it has to be a union job?
It has to pay union wages. It doesn't have to be a union job, but it has to pay union wages.
Okay, that all fair enough. And again, I have absolutely no way of judging anything because I don't know how many square feet this is. I don't know what kind of roof it is, and I couldn't find it online. I looked and I found the age of the roof that I had, but that was all I could come up with. Now for tomorrow, does that mean that when this is raised as a consent agenda, I or somebody need to go up there and say, no, we don't want it as a consent agenda, and we want you to vote to say we're going to break this up so we can discuss them separately?
Again, this is Arlene Miller. Why don't we try to get that answer for you in advance? So you don't have to do that tomorrow night. Is that
Well, I
okay?
may very well have to do that tomorrow night, depending on what that answer is.
I understand. You're looking for more information on this and said maybe we could have between the DPW director and CPC, we could maybe have an offline conversation. So your answers might be able to be your questions satisfactorily answered before tomorrow night.
Super. Let me give you my phone number.
Sure. Go right ahead.
413
Yeah.
348
Yeah.
1425.
1425.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Arlene, thank you for that help in that area. It is, almost $250,000, but we know it's an old building. It's used by a large number of members of our community, the library. But yes, when we look at the consent agenda, we have two of these that cover a lot of articles. And our main reason for doing this is because we want people to only be at town meeting the minimum amount of time. We aren't sure, how contagious anyone's specific member is there. So if we can answer your questions, prior to this, John, that would be great because, our goal is to get through the town meeting as quickly as possible. There will be other venues for you to discuss some of these things in the future, but I guess that's the main thing. And I don't know, Rebecca looked like she had something she might want to say, or Lynn does. But Rebecca, do you have anything you want to say? Or
Lynn was just waving her hand. It looks like she had an answer, so I'll defer to her first.
Storrs Library is 20,000 square feet. I know that's not the roof footage specifically for you, but that does give you a ballpark at least.
Okay, that's great.
And Tom, I was just going to address the question of how to do something for anybody who wishes to hold an article for separate consideration at town meeting. At the time when I repeat the article numbers, I will instruct anybody who wishes to hold it to yell out "hold." So it's a simple procedure to hold it for separate consideration if somebody does wish to do so.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And so we had, a series of articles here, all had CPC funding, the Community Preservation Project. There was one article that was removed from the grouping that CPC had identified. That's Article 30. I move that the town vote to fund the Community Preservation Project for a feasibility design study for a skate park in the amount of $15,000 to fund a study of feasibility and design of a skate park funded by the Community Preservation undesignated fund balance. Any questions on Article 30?
On Friedson.
Yes.
I'll simply state my unequivocal opposition to this. A, because $15,000 now will turn into hundreds of thousands of dollars later. Mm-hmm. And B, for the same reason that in properties we manage, we don't allow trampolines, we don't allow swimming pools because they are a legal liability nightmare. I am sure there are a small group of vocal citizens that are very keen to have this. I'm not, and I suspect we'll find out tomorrow, a bunch of others aren't either. That's all I've got.
Okay. Any other questions or comment on Article 30? Okay. So Article 31, I move that the town vote to establish a funding limit for the town's Council on Aging revolving fund, with payments from the fund to be expended by the Director of the Council of Aging up to $85,000. Any questions on Article 31? It's a funding limit. Article 32. I move that the town vote to amend Article 2, Chapter 700, Wetlands Control by the bylaws of the town to reflect current administrative practices for processing wetland permits. And then it goes into extensive description about streams and permits. There is a nice sort of summary at the bottom of this about wetland control and everything. And I will just skip to that. And it says that this revision proposed by the Conservation Commission includes the requirements of the Riverfront Protection Act, which established a 200-foot regulated riverfront area on either bank of a perennial stream. Other revisions include the details of processing permit requests to reflect current practices, rewriting of the enforcement section, and addition of a new section on appeals relations to Wetlands Protection Act and severability. So any questions on Article 32? Okay, Article 33, I move that the town vote to amend the town's zoning bylaws by amending the following sections. The proposed amendment to Article 4, Section B, 6.6, the Longmeadow zoning, add a second sentence. A connected facility is any facility for receiving, processing, and otherwise handling natural gas for sale to consumers. So we're looking for this bylaw amendment. Any questions on Article 33? Okay. 34 is another bylaw amendment having to do with traffic study. And this, you know, the planning board wanted to make sure that this bylaw was put in place. Any questions on Article 34? Okay, Article 35 is another zoning bylaw having to do with natural gas utilities and facility pipeline operators regarding pressure, odorizing heat, fire suppression, safety issues, and that there would be an imposed sentence or, you know, penalties and fines. Any questions on Article 35? And Article 36, and this is a citizen's petition, so we won't discuss that. And I don't know if you've heard anything else from the petitioner about having it, but I will be giving him a call tomorrow just to verify where things are at.
John Friedson here. Why would we not discuss it?
Well, it's a citizen's petition, so the board has nothing to do with it, and the person who put the petition out isn't here to defend their argument, so that would put them at a pretty big disadvantage, and so, you know, they are citizens of the town.
Just for those that are here and listening, a couple of quick points. First thing, when I first read this looked like it was something supporting the idea. Then when I started reading through it, it looked like it was something the electric company had written. I have to wonder why, in a world with electric cars and all types of electric appliances and the ability to have an electric house, we're putting a 9 kW limit per property. That seemed strange, particularly given what's going on right now in the world of efficiencies and solar panels. If you happen to follow that like I do, the ability to generate more than that is absolutely a possibility at this point. The other two things were the issue of why on a traffic intersection there's going to be a 30-foot setback. The diagram that's presented makes it look like we all live in absolutely enormous properties. Now, I'm on a corner lot, and that 30-foot setback would eat up about half of my lot. So there's something that's not making a lot of sense. What's so different about my corner lot to be treated that way as opposed to somebody who's not on a corner lot and gets a 10-foot setback? And then finally, the issue about requiring both a tree screen and a lattice, which is just horrific looking. One or the other, maybe. Lattices capture wildlife. They look like crap. Stuff grows in them. It's hard to cut down. I see no reason to require both of them. In fact, I don't see no reason for the lattice at all. So just for what it's worth, since he's not here, the limitations really don't make sense to me. If you're going to do this, we're in a modern era, bite the bullet. There's going to be solar panels just like they're on our roofs, and they're not pretty there either. Let's not put limitations on this like that. They don't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well,
All I got.
you know, when we originally talked about the town meeting, we discussed that the possibility that this could move to a fall town meeting and be voted on then. So you may have some time to talk to the petitioner. I'm sure they'd be glad to talk to you. So I guess that is it for our covering the warrant. I want to thank everybody who was participating and good questions. And I would just say, look forward to seeing as many people tomorrow night at the town meeting, at least a quorum, and we'll get a budget in place so we can continue the business of the town. And you know, we hope that you trust the select board's, you know, main mission is to come up with a good budget that meets the needs of our entire community and protects us from in the future from, you know, any challenges to our way of life. We know that people like Longmeadow and they like the way it is. They really don't want to see it change much. But even not changing is expensive. So it's not a budget that small. I do see a hand waving.
Yep, Pete Landon,
Yeah.
can you hear me? Question on the state aid, is there any indication of what the state's thinking these days? I know we have $8 million in the budget related to their largesse, and wondered how the thinking goes on that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Lynn, if you want to take that, or Paul Sturzik. I guess in terms of state aid numbers, Paul, do we have an estimate?
Yeah, we still have that 14% drop in the unrestricted local aid. I think that came out to about a tune of either $250,000 or $300,000 that we dropped in the local aid. That's the only drop that we have right now projected. We have level funded Chapter 70 and all the other line items. And it's kind of a wait and see. There was a Zoom meeting with Senator Lesser last week. And there is nothing really definitive coming out of Boston to give us any indication to make any other changes at this point. I don't know, Lynn, if you have anything to add.
No, that's the same information you have. I wish I had something better.
Yeah.
All about East Coast.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, good. So we'll call it a wrap. Look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow. And the town meeting is at 6 p.m. You know, we usually start at 7, but it's at 6. But it's one of the longest days of the year, so we won't be in the dark. I think we'll be all right. Okay. Thank you very much and good evening, and see you tomorrow.